The very first time you log into WordPress, there are a few administrative settings you ought to take a look at just to get them going in the first place, and then you can come back to other settings later when you need to. Let's go over here to the settings area. One of the things that you can reassure your clients about is there's a lot of settings, and sometimes they can feel a bit confusing, but really there's very few of them that you actually need to touch. Most of them by default are set up the way you need them, but you have the opportunity to set some of these for your client anyway. So this is the general settings screen, the very first one in the settings menu. Let's check a few things. Some of these were entered by you when you first installed WordPress, like the title of the site and the email address that you put in as well. So the site title, that's what we put in, but then there's this tagline. You'll see this quite often actually. People will forget to change this, and it comes out in their theme as just another WordPress site. Your theme may or may not make use of it. The default one does, so you'll want to change this to an appropriate tagline underneath your site title. Now there's two addresses here, and this can get confusing, especially to clients who come back later and say, why are these here and they both look exactly the same? They will look exactly the same if your WordPress installation is in the root directory of your website. The site address, of course, is your public URL, your domain name. WordPress address is where you've put WordPress. So again, they could be one and the same place, but if you've got WordPress in a subdirectory, this address will reflect that, and you want to check and make sure it reflects that. There's your email address, the one you entered in installation, as we mentioned. If you need to change that, of course you can. But beware, this is the one where all the notifications go from the system. This is a bit different than your actual profile. As you as an administrator, your profile address is related to your password and so forth. This is related to notifications from the system. Membership, just make sure that no one can register. You want that off in most cases. Check your time zone. You've got a nice drop-down menu here that gives you lots of choices for cities around the world. Choose your time zone. Again, date format, pretty straightforward for most people, the default. The time format, pretty straightforward, but again, you do have choices here. And the week starts on, and this is quite interesting because it affects some plugins too, the calendar plugins and so forth. And a lot of people prefer Sunday. By default, it's on Monday, but you can change it to any day you want, of course. Always remembering to save your changes. Another one that's very important to check is under discussion. The discussion screen at the very top here, there's this sentence right here, allow people to post comments on new articles. And articles really is just the same word for posts and pages. That's what they mean by that. Right now, by default, comment boxes will appear on pages, posts, anywhere on the site. Depending on what kind of site you've got, you may want to turn this off. Like on a regular website, you don't usually want comments on the pages. You want that more on blog posts and things like that. So I tend to take this off and change the default to no, don't allow people to post comments. Then what you do is on particular posts, you can choose to allow comments. So again, you have the option at any time to allow comments, but by default, I usually have this one off. But that's up to you. Again, most of these are already set for comments and so forth. They're pretty well set here. Basically, they're saying, if we go down here, this is one that comes up commonly. Comment author must have a previously approved comment. What that does is it says the first time you comment, it will have to be approved. After you've been approved, you can keep commenting without the administrator having to do that. Again, you can change all of these, but by default, most of these work quite well. And finally, the one to double check on, again, and it tells you up top here, remember search engines blocked. It does always tell us that, but I always just go in and double check. There it is. I would like to block search engines. Until your site is ready, then you can click on I would like to have my site indexed by the search engines. And remember to save your changes at all times. So again, those are some basic settings that you want to go over to make sure they're all operating well, and those are good ones also to show your client because they're fairly basic and can affect the basic running of the site.